You're listening to The Waste Less Life, a podcast for the planet.
I'm Spencer.
And I'm Blake, and we're here to remind you that you don't have to be completely wasteless to waste less.
Everyone has what it takes to help the planet, so on this podcast, we'll give you easy, everyday tips on how you can reduce your environmental footprint, throw away less, and do your part to make the world a better place for everyone.
We know not everyone can change their whole life to be a dedicated environmentalist, but we think that if we all made a few small efforts, our planet would thank us.
Today's episode is all about COVID-19 and its relationship to waste and the environment. As we finally start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, we want to reflect on how it's affected our planet and talk about what that means for us going forward. The COVID-19 pandemic has had major negative impacts around the world for the past year and a half. One of the biggest impacts, and a positive one at that actually, is that it has improved sanitation standards worldwide. Whenever I have to go out and I have to use like the public restroom somewhere, all of the restrooms I've been to have had like fully stocked soaps and paper towel dispensers that are just like working. A, they work, and B, they're also fully stocked, and that's amazing. There are hand sanitizer stations like sporadically around all of the grocery stores and places I've been to. So public sanitation has never been better. But there's a B-side to that conversation, because although everybody is like obsessed with washing their hands and being clean, and like if you think about all of those containers that the soaps and the Germ-X and the paper towels, all of that actually is waste, and it's going to amount to like a big, huge accumulation of waste at the end of the pandemic. It's not like we haven't used those things, forever. Like everybody has used Germ-X, before the whole health crisis started. That was something that everybody used anyways, but like all of a sudden this huge influx of everybody in the world trying to buy and use these things all the time, every day for a year.
Yeah, and that's not to say that like we shouldn't be doing those things. Like obviously you and I both know that yes.
It's like a great thing. Like I said, I was like, it's probably one of the best things to happen. Like I love going into a clean bathroom, and every single bathroom is clean. I'll tell you what, like I've never been to a gas station bathroom as spotless as during the pandemic, but it is like something that we need to consider is like, behind the scenes of all of that, all of the soap dispensers and like little Germ-X bottles that you might keep in your backpack, and you just, when it's done, you just throw it away and you get another one. It's the little things like that.
Yeah, I think that if we had started, and by we, I just mean like the collective human race, if we had started working on more sustainable hygiene things earlier, then like when this hit, we would have already had some of those in place. But because like that's where we were with our hygiene, is like things come in plastic bottles, we use trees to make paper towels. Like we were already in kind of a place where when we needed to be more hygienic, like we were already stuck with some of those problematic, like environmentally speaking, problematic solutions. But I think that this can be a place where we can start to reflect on that. Like we've kind of seen some of the impacts that like the way we treat hygiene has on the environment with all of these plastic bottles and all of the trees that go into making paper towels. So it's kind of an opportunity for us, again, as a human race, to sort of reflect on how we're doing that and to start thinking of more sustainable solutions, so that next time there's a pandemic, or like, I don't know, if we're just going to wash our hands going forward, then maybe we can start to work on solutions that are better collectively. Because right now, that's what we've got. And like, if we want to stay safe and stay healthy, there's not a lot we can do about it. Like we're stuck with the solutions we have. But going forward, we can start to explore some other solutions.
Yeah, so I think prior to this giant virus pandemic, everybody was kind of lax with like hand washing and that type of thing. So not a lot of people used hand soap, or maybe you didn't fill up your personal hand soap as much at home. Now that it's become a big thing, and especially the CDC said specifically, like bar soap, just plain old bar soap is like the easiest thing to do to prevent spreading germs. Bar soap, you don't even have to have the liquid soap. And more people are probably being turned on to that, especially whenever everything first started, and like all of the little like cheapo liquid soaps, those were just like snatched out of stores. I think a lot of people might have turned towards bar soap, and in a way, that's like actually really good, because if they turn to that and they think, oh yeah, this is just the same, it works, then that's like a step in the right direction. I've actually seen in some stores aluminum hand sanitizer bottles, which I think are really interesting. It's the first time I've actually seen something like that in big box stores, which is really cool because aluminum actually is infinitely recyclable. You just melt down the metal and they can reshape it into anything that they want. Plastic is actually, there's like a 2 or 3 recycle limit on plastic before the polymers break down and you can't reuse them. So the fact that they're making aluminum hand sanitizer bottles, it's really nice because you can buy a big bottle of that and then just refill your little tiny plastic ones that you already carry around, and that way you're not throwing them away at the end of their use. So I think that's kind of exciting. So in addition to everybody, being extra cautious about washing their hands and sanitizing and cleaning everything, people have also been required to wear face masks, which is kind of a public first in the US. It's been a wild ride for face masks because at the beginning, everybody was recommended to have an N95 strength mask. And remember, I don't know if you remember how like quickly those got sold out, and then everybody was banned from buying them because hospitals needed them, and it took a while for people to catch on and like get sustainable options, or just get masks in general. I at the beginning, all these DIY people started making their own masks, and you actually made one of your own right at the beginning before it was like it was an industry.
Yeah. When it was like first recommended to wear masks, and the CDC eventually came out and said like, yeah, okay, these N95s are better, but to prevent community spread, like a cloth mask is fine. It'll stop your droplets. Like just get a cloth one. And so that's when I made my own, because like trying to waste less, I wanted to be able to reuse something that I had. So I used like an old T-shirt and I made a couple of masks, and they worked great. And I actually used them for a few months. I made a few of them, but eventually I did end up buying like a nicer one that fit my face a little better and that was nicer, but was still reusable, because the disposable ones, like you can't recycle them. There are some companies who are like trying to come out with ways to recycle them, but there's no like widespread solution for recycling disposable masks yet. And so every single one that you go through like just gets thrown away, and even if you do reuse them a few times, like you can't wash them, they're going to get dirty, they're going to break down. And so a reusable one's a great option because you can just wash it, throw it in the washer with your clothes, and reuse it for a really long time. And when it does finally start breaking down, like if you get like an organic cotton one, for example, that'll break down naturally. And an organic cotton one is like the same price as a pack of 50 masks or whatever, if you buy the disposable one. So it's not like it's more expensive. It's the same price, and like you can just use it forever.
I found myself sometimes forgetting, because I have reusable masks, they're like a staple. I have one in my car, I have one in my room just in case I need to like grab one and go somewhere. Sometimes I'll be out and about and I won't have one, and I have to pick up a reusable one from a store, and I always think about how many other people, not just in the store that I'm going to, but around the world, that don't have or might have forgotten their reusable face mask, and they have to pick up, like, in order to go into most public places you have to have a mask, so you have to pick up this single use mask to be able to go buy some bananas or whatever you need to get. So as soon as that's done, people just take it off and throw it away. I've seen masks in parking lots at the grocery store. It's so sad seeing all the masks left in shopping carts. It's like you see masks in all places now. In fact, I actually went hiking a couple of weeks ago in this like kind of off-beaten path river creek area. This is like a little spot that I like to go to, and there were masks right next to the water, and I know that they had been washed downstream from somewhere else, but it's like this is a remote area, and for masks to just be reaching this, the mask is the new plastic bottle. Almost. It's like, I hate to say that, but like, because it's become like a staple to exist in many places these days. And Think about the people who don't have a reusable one and use a brand new mask every single day.
So you mentioned like seeing them in the like in your hiking trail and everything. I took a picture for our Instagram post, which some of our listeners might have seen. If you haven't, go to our Instagram at Wasteless Podcast. But I took a picture of like a mask on the ground, and that was just on my like regular morning walking trail. There's like a little nature trail in our neighborhood, and I had like 5 options of masks on the ground to take a picture of, which is like incredibly
It's
sad.
so
Like
sad.
they really have become the new plastic bottle. I see so many masks everywhere. And so what people can do is like we mentioned, just get a reusable one. And if you already use single use masks, like don't just throw them out. Use the ones that you have and that you've already bought, or maybe keep them around in case you've got a friend who forgot one and you need to run somewhere. Maybe like keep them around. Don't just throw them in the trash. But if you haven't already, go ahead and pick up a reusable mask. Like I mentioned, they're really cheap, and even though things are starting to look better, like masks probably aren't going away anytime soon. They're probably going to be around this fall. So it's not like this is over. Go ahead and pick one up and use it. They're also a lot more comfortable because they're like soft and made to form fit your face.
So, in addition to masks, PPE, which is personal protective equipment, gloves, that was like a huge craze at the beginning of the pandemic. Remember when everybody was trying to like cover every inch of their body with latex and plastic to prevent any germ from touching them? That's not just like a everyday person problem. When it comes to hospitals and like physicians and healthcare workers, they have to use gloves. I mean, they've had to use like latex gloves from the beginning. I mean, there are standards put in place, but like since the pandemic has like opened a whole new window of like extra protection for those things, I think that that's also something just to think about. It's not like we can stop, our hospital workers from being wasteful, but like it is something to consider. Like this influx of people being put into healthcare facilities and being treated for being sick, every little like interaction with somebody else requires a new set of whatever PPE to be used.
Yeah, and it's like the hygiene thing that we mentioned earlier. Like we're not saying this to say, people shouldn't wear gloves. Like, well, people in Kroger shouldn't wear gloves.
Yeah, we've moved past that.
Yeah, you don't have to wear them to the grocery store. Just wash your hands and wear a mask. But yes, we're not saying that like nurses and doctors shouldn't wear gloves. Obviously, they should. We're just saying that like this is a great time to start thinking about other solutions, because it is a waste problem, and we want to keep people safe. But at the same time, this isn't a problem that like we can solve. I know that we're here to give you everyday tips. Our tip isn't tell your nurse to take off their gloves and don't waste them. That's not the tip. The tip is just that this is something that we should all start being more mindful about, because there are solutions out there. We just haven't found them yet, but eventually we'll find a sustainable way to stay safe and to limit the spread of germs and stuff like that. So just something to start thinking about.
So when it comes to PPE, vaccines, people who give vaccines are like, healthcare physicians. Mm-hmm. They always have gloves and syringes, like the little vaccine shot and the bottles. Those aren't new. Those have been around since, penicillin, basically. Like those are, a staple to healthcare. It's not like we can do anything to get those away, but I want people to realize that it's not something that is bad for the health of society, but it's bad in terms of this massive influx of millions and millions of people using these little tiny needles for a second, and then them being tossed into like a sharp spin and just put into a bio-waste landfill. Twice, usually. 2 doses is usually like the amount of shots that people are getting. So think about the millions and millions of people around the world, maybe even billions, who knows, getting like a little shot. It gets thrown into a little bin, and then you can't reuse it. Medically, you can't reuse a needle or like a medical supply item like that. It's just, it contaminates. So there's nothing we can do about that. But it's important to think about that because everybody's caught up in like, oh, I got my double shots, like I'm ready to go party. But like in like 40 years, when there's like a giant layer of like 2020's garbage that archaeologists are like uncovering or digging through to get to like fossils or whatever, it's important to at least think about that.
Yeah, everybody should get their vaccine if they can do it safely, but you're right. It's important to just be aware of the waste that you're producing, even if it's a necessary form of waste like a vaccine that's going to keep you and your loved ones and your community safe. Just the first step of reducing your waste is knowing what you're wasting. And a lot of people will get their shot and never see that needle again, never see that vial again, never see the rubber gloves that touch them or the alcohol pad that wiped their arm. Like they'll never see any of that again. But
Exactly.
the earth is gonna that's gonna be around for a long time.
That's part of the earth
somewhere
now, forever. Like,
yeah. So even though you don't see it again, like just kind of being aware of what's going on is so important and such an important first step when it comes to reducing your waste. But like I mentioned, this I think is a necessary form of waste. Like it's gonna keep us safe. It's going to keep people from dying, which is really important. Like that's more important than, the waste of one syringe or vial is keeping people from dying. And a friend of ours who is a medical professional actually mentioned to us, we talked to him a little bit about this, and he told us that a good way to think about it is by taking your shot or, by everybody getting vaccinated, it's reducing the amount of people who end up in the hospital, which is just good for people's health, and like fewer people dying is a great thing in general. But even for the environment, when people are in the hospital, like Spencer mentioned earlier, like there's all kinds of waste that goes into any hospital visit. So the more people who are in a hospital, the more gloves are going to be wasted there, or the more medical waste that's going to be put into the environment just from that one visit. So really, it's also getting your vaccine is also less wasteful in a way because it's preventing hospitalizations.
back whenever everything started shutting down and people started like heavily quarantining, there was like a massive reduction in carbon waste actually. When people weren't driving to their offices and they started working from home, that around the world everybody was like shocked. Scientists were like, this is incredible. Like the research that came out of that like short burst of time when like every city was like almost completely locked down, when like entire cities in countries had stay-at-home orders, and all of the car traffic and transportation traffic like almost came to a halt. That did wonders on CO2 emissions. People used a bit more electricity while they were at home, but that reduced, offices from being in operation, and all of those giant facilities that people have to go to. Those were all reduced to almost nothing, and it was some So now that we're kind of like in the cycle of working from home, and people, still have to go to their jobs. Some people, essential workers, definitely still have to go to their job sites. People who don't have to do that are opting to work from home, which is a green decision in its own.
Yeah, and companies have learned that like it's okay. Like so many people, switch to work from home for the first time. Like, even before the pandemic, I was working from home occasionally. That was like a kind of normal thing for me and for our company. But companies realize like, oh, we can just do this, which is great for a lot of workers, and because like most people prefer that. It's great for the company because like they're saving money because they don't have to pay for an office or whatever. And it's also great for the environment because like you mentioned, there's not as much carbon going into the atmosphere. There's not as much energy powering an office while at the same time your air conditioner is running at home with nobody there. Like
driving to work was my least favorite part of working. So like the fact that I don't have to do that anymore is amazing, and I don't have to waste as much gas. Like it's so lovely.
Yeah, and so if you are a person who is able to work at home in the pandemic and you still have that option, consider the environmental impacts of working at home. Not only do you get to sleep in later, you can consider that too, but also consider that
I certainly consider that.
It's great for the environment. And if you aren't working from home now, but you know that you could have or you were earlier, maybe mention to your supervisor or your boss or your leadership that you liked that, and maybe mention the financial benefits if that's what it's going to take to sway your boss's opinion. But if you can work from home still, do it.
So the flip side of that is that now that people are staying home more, they're getting things delivered to them more often. People order food out a lot more often. People have grocery delivery now.
Oh, I forgot about grocery delivery. Yeah.
Yeah, people have Amazon packages that they have delivered straight to the house that they're already staying in. Like, those industries have like boomed because it's so convenient now to be at your house and not have to leave anywhere when all of these services have like rushed into this like little niche, and it's almost replaced the need to go anyplace.
It's also just kind of been normalized since the pandemic. There are a lot of people who just never tried food delivery or grocery delivery or whatever.
Oh yeah, that was the first time I had ever tried it, was the pandemic. I was like, you know what? I might as well. I mean, it was at the very beginning of the pandemic that I started. It was like ordering out was the easiest thing, and I tried it and I was like, this is really great. And I liked it, but I also tried to consider like the environmental impact of like that person who has to drive to all of these houses to like deliver food. It's still emissions. Like, we're getting closer to electric and autonomy in the auto industry, but like right now it's like somebody's in their car and they're making like 20 stops an hour maybe, for dropping off groceries or food or
Yeah, which may be more efficient than everybody going on their own because like maybe they can, hit a few stops in the trip that like would take three different people going because they were all going by themselves.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like an algorithm to like organize that.
That would be interesting to know. But there's other types of waste that is involved with all of this delivery, like going into a restaurant, for example, and like just getting takeout, even if you're still taking it home. They might put, well, no, they'll put it in a box and they might put it in a bag, but even then you can oftentimes just carry the box out. But oh my gosh, when you get something delivered, it's like they put it in a bag and then they put that bag in a bag and then they put all of your condiments that you didn't ask for and all of your fake silverware that's made in plastic and packaged in plastic. Like they put all of that in a bag and then they tape it all shut so that you know that your driver didn't take any of your fries. Like there's so much extra stuff when you get it delivered. And don't get me wrong, like I love food delivery. I do it more often than I should, but like there's just a lot of waste that goes into it. And so if you have the ability, if you have the time, or you have the, I don't know, the means to get your food on your own, like definitely do that, especially if you can like walk or bike to a place where you can get it. That's an even better way to pick up food.
Yeah. I bike to the local Thai place down the street. I like order it on my phone and I go pick it up, and they know me and they know how often I ask for them not to put silverware in my bag, that they don't do it anymore, and they give me a paper bag instead of a plastic bag too. I feel like every time they see my name in an order, they like no not to do that. But yeah, it's important to consider those things whenever it comes to ordering out. Like, instead of you going to a restaurant and eating off of a plate and using silverware that's provided by the restaurant that they just take into the kitchen and wash, it's all supposed to be single use now, so it's you personally use it and then you're responsible for disposing of it. Styrofoam is the big culprit here. Styrofoam and plastic cutlery, because those are forever materials. Mm-hmm. A lot of places around where I live are trying to go into more cardboard style or like waxed recycled mm-hmm. Type of containers, but it's most of the time it's like a plastic to-go container or styrofoam. Every single thing that you order, if you go to a restaurant, it might all be put onto one plate, but they're going to separate everything that they could possibly separate whenever it comes to a to-go thing.
Oh my gosh. The Mexican place where they put your beans in one cup, your salsa in one cup, like your cheese in one, like they disassemble everything. It's all in separate cups and you have to like assemble it yourself. Oh,
yes.
I hate it.
It's bad when you think about every single little like container like that.
Yeah. So I think for listeners, people who want to reduce their waste, I think that the hierarchy here for what's the best waste reduction method for like food delivery or for, eating dinner is, first, maybe get better at cooking at home. Maybe try to do that more often. But obviously, you can't cook at home for everything. Yeah, so if you're going to eat out, the hierarchy is, first, if you can do it safely, go into the restaurant. Obviously, don't do it if it's an unsafe place or if you're sick. If you can safely eat inside a restaurant, that's where you're going to get the least amount of waste, because like you get reusable plate, reusable cutlery. Take your own to-go container if you don't think you're going to finish your food, and you can even, have your own Pyrex to take home or whatever. But if you don't want to eat in a restaurant or it's unsafe, you can still pick up the food and take it home. Like we mentioned, like there's usually less waste involved in that. You can even just say, oh, I don't need a bag, and just grab like the box of food itself, which is what I usually do. But if you do absolutely want to have food delivered, maybe you're not feeling well or you just can't leave for whatever reason, the thing that I try to do is when I get food delivered, there are some, I know that I think Uber Eats used to do it, but I checked the other day and didn't see it. But sometimes there will be like a little box that you can check that says don't include any silverware or whatever. So if you've got an app where you can do that box, I always type in the special instructions thing, because like you can send a little note to the restaurant, and I'll just type like, I just say,
I do that
I don't
too. I'm bad. I'm annoying
I
about
don't need
it.
any condiments. I don't need any silverware. I don't need any napkins. I've got it all at home. And I try to like say it, I try not to be like a jerk about it. I try to say like, you guys save it for you, don't waste that on me.
Oh, that's sweet. I'm literally like, no bag, no fork, no anything, and most of the time like they don't, and I'm like, wow, thank you for reading. Like,
yeah, so if you are gonna get delivery, like at least just try to reduce your waste as much as possible.
so for groceries, I used to try to buy from like a bulk store. So I would go and get like bulk soap and bulk like granola, or bulk like rice or coffee beans from the natural store that's like near my house. And it was great because I used to bring like every single Tupperware tub that I could possibly bring, and I just fill those all up, and they weigh it at the register and charge me, the by the pound. And as soon as the pandemic hit, they stopped allowing personal containers, and they finally lifted those restrictions at my place. But I just wanted to touch on that because like the pandemic halted a lot of initiatives that places were taking. Like Starbucks for a while actually had a bring your own cup and get like a discount, and they stopped that. And I stopped getting Starbucks as soon as they did that. But out of the pandemic, I have seen Starbucks and a few other places, I believe, try a new initiative where it's basically you rent a cup. You get a drink, you get your cup. It's like a double-walled, insulated, got a really sturdy lid. And whenever you're done with it, you bring it back to the store and drop it off into like a box. So there's no like cross-contamination other than the box. It's like a lending. They lend you the cup, you bring it back, and you get like a discount. And instead of like, everybody having to have like a plastic cup, they have been forced to like come up with a new solution. And I think that's really important. That's like a little benefit from everybody taking higher health standards.
All right, Spencer, so we've talked about a lot. We've talked about masks and PPE and hygiene and vaccines, commuting, food delivery. We've kind of hit like the whole COVID-19 waste situation. There's a lot of it. But for the people who maybe feel overwhelmed, or for people who just want something that they can start doing now, we end every episode with 2 easy takeaways, 2 tips that you can start implementing as soon as possible. I'll go ahead and give mine, and that's something that we talked a little bit about earlier, but I think is really easy to do, reduces a lot of waste, and is still a way to stay healthy in a pandemic, and that is to explore your soap options. We talked a little bit earlier about bar soap, but there's all kinds of ways to use soap that are way less wasteful than what we normally do. So there's the bar soap option, which we talked a little bit about earlier. I don't know that we really mentioned why it's less wasteful, but mostly it's concentrated. It's more concentrated because it's not like watered down already. You get it wet when you were washing your hands. So you get more soap and less weight, which means that more can fit on a truck, which means that there's less CO2 to deliver it everywhere. Whereas like with bottled soap, there's already so much water in there, which is extra weight and just like extra stuff that has to be transported, even though you've got water at home. Plus, the soap liquid soap usually comes in plastic, whereas bar soap, a lot of times you can get it package free. I know multiple grocery stores where I've bought soap just like by itself. It maybe has like a cardboard label on it or something. But you can get it package free. If anything, it's just going to come in like a cardboard box. There's also some companies where, and this is what we use at our house because we actually do like the foaming liquid soap. There are some companies that use a glass bottle and you fill it with your own water and then just drop a little tablet in. And the tablet is just concentrated soap, and it dissolves in the water and makes liquid soap for you.
Those are always so cool. I love companies that have done like concentration, style products like that.
Yeah, because then you don't have to ship water across the country, and like you've already got water at home, you don't have to have it shipped across the country. Just get the important part, which is the soap, and put it in your own water. And these are great because they're just these little tabs that come in little cardboard envelopes. So everything that the entire package that is delivered to my house is completely compostable. So I take the little tabs out, I drop them in the glass water bottle that they sent me 2 years ago and that I just use over and over, and then I can just compost the rest of it. So, oh, and that company's Blue Land, by the way, if you want to look it up. Blue Land makes some really awesome, like, low waste products. But yes, that's my tip, is to explore your soap options. You don't have to buy bottled soap.
What I would recommend is just kind of like get a little kit together that you can reuse of items that you need. A little to-go silverware kit, a mask, a little bottle of hand sanitizer that you can refill. Just things that you can bring places that you'll know that you need, because a lot of those things are either required or you will need them. I have one. I have like a little crossbody bag. It's trendy now, but like it's trendy for a reason, because I have a like cutlery set. I've got a metal straw in there. I've got a little like package of mints. I've got a mask, a little like spray Germex thing that I've been refilling. Like just put together like a little kit that you can take everywhere. Make sure you have those things so that you don't have the opportunity to use more than what you need. Like going to a grocery store and you don't have a mask, if you have it in like a little kit that you bring everywhere with you, and I'm not saying like be a utilitarian and bring everything you could possibly need all the time with you. Just be mindful of what your plans are and what you'll need. And I made one. I think it's super fun to carry everywhere. It's this cute little black bag that I put across my shoulder.
Yes. Yeah, great tip. I think that's awesome. Well, we have made it. We've talked about a lot, but we thank you so much for listening, and we hope that you stay healthy and stay safe and waste less.
This episode of The Waste Less Life is plastic-free and infinitely reusable, so go ahead and give it another listen, guilt-free if you'd like.
Or recycle this episode by sharing it online or with a friend who you think would enjoy it.
And follow us on Instagram at Waste Less Podcast.
Thank you all so much for listening. We hope you stay safe.